Only 42% of children enrolled in early learning programs, or ELPs, in South Africa are developmentally on track for their age, according to the latest Thrive by 5 index. These are the opening lines of Shonisani Chikalange's article featured in the Daily Dispatch on the 8th of September 2025. My name is Carolyn Viget, and today I will critically engage with how exclusion and marginalization appear in this article. My focus will be on how these issues affect children of preschool years and the implications they have on children once they reach school-going age. Chikalange's article reports on the findings of the Thrive by 5 index that was released on World Literature Day, the same day as the article was published. In this presentation, I will cover a summary of the article, an analysis of what was written, what exclusion and marginalization mean, relevant policies and strategies regarding education, and finally, the impact these building blocks have on an inclusive education in South Africa. The Thrive by 5 Index is South Africa's first national survey of 4-year-olds. In fact, it is the first of its scope on the continent. The survey gathered data from 5,001 children and 1,388 early learning programs. The research showed that only 42% of children are considered to be on track for age-appropriate tasks. This means that the number of children considered behind are more than those considered to be on track. The article commented on findings from the index, such as conclusions on children being ready to start school, the perceptions of primary caregivers with regard to their child's development, the variation in performance between boys and girls, gaps based on socio-economic status, and lastly, the effect of nutrition on children. These findings are relevant to our topic of children being at risk of exclusion in schools because they speak directly to issues about long-term educational outcomes. We shouldn't separate what children experience in their preschool ages from their later school success. Children who experience barriers in reaching their developmental goals are more likely to continue facing barriers on their learning journey. Gaps in a child's readiness to start school means they are at greater risk of exclusion and marginalization once school starts. Exclusion can take the form of being denied access to schools, and marginalization in the potential to fall behind the rest of the class with regard to age-appropriate tasks. In order to understand what inclusion really is, it is necessary to start with definitions of exclusion and marginalization. Booth and Ainscoe describe exclusion as the decreased participation in mainstream education. Mowat defines marginalization as belonging but feeling undervalued. In other words, exclusion refers to keeping people out of a group, and marginalization refers to people being in a group but being or feeling excluded from within. There are many reasons exclusion or marginalization takes place in a school context. The years before entering school are no different. These two topics have gone unaddressed in preschool-aged children, and so systemic inequity is in place before children even step into a classroom. The Thrive by 5 index has data that predicts later outcomes and so helps us address these issues. The release of the Salamanca Framework for Action on Special Needs Education in 1994 paved the way for global change in the understanding and the acknowledgement of inclusive education. In 2000, at the World Education Forum in Dakar, the Dakar Framework for Action was adopted and continued the momentum created in Salamanca. The Dakar Framework reaffirmed goals and set international targets for improving access and quality education for those excluded or marginalized. It is due to these frameworks that South Africa released Education White Paper 6 on special needs education. In a more recent context, the Thrive by 5 Index from 2022 attempts to further the groundwork of the above-mentioned frameworks and policy. It draws attention to the needs of those at a preschool age. There is a gap in policy with regard to this age, and if not addressed, the school system risks becoming an enabler of exclusion and marginalization. There are two concerning issues the Thrive by 5 Index discovered that Chikalanka reports on in her article. Firstly, the role parents play in inclusion. The study found that parents didn't show to hold a realistic understanding of their child's development. This means the necessary age-appropriate screening that would aid in inclusive practices at school doesn't take place. Secondly, socio-economic factors with regard to development. The main discrepancy, she reports, between economically affluent children and those of low-income families is the development of fine motor coordination. Other issues, such as numeracy skills, nutrition, and stunting, are also considered to stem from socio-economic challenges. The research shows us that there are systemic inequalities already present before children start school. But what strategies can we implement to change this reality? The Thrive by 5 Index suggests educating communities through campaigns and community outreach when it comes to parent involvement and the apparent gap in how parents perceive their children's abilities and realistic age-related skills. With a better understanding of what is considered age-appropriate skills, parents will be able to identify problems with their children's development sooner. This will in turn reduce the barriers to inclusive education that the children could face when starting school. The index also calls for the removal of financial barriers, but does not suggest ideas for implementation. This is unfortunately not a new issue in South Africa. And while many solutions do already exist, the data shows that more attention needs to be paid to the preschool ages with regard to financial support. Quality improvements with regard to policy will also help change the current trajectory of inequality. Thrive by 5 has provided invaluable data. Academics, policymakers, education professionals, and other groups now have an awareness that only 42% of preschool-going children are developmentally on track. Without appropriate early interventions, children enter school already disadvantaged. Schools risk continuing exclusion and marginalization instead of promoting inclusion. Policies must bridge the school readiness gap to ensure equality from day one. As Gwarube is quoted in Chikalanka's article, access opens the door. Quality unlocks their potential. We've looked at key findings from the article, like the importance of parental and community involvement in the learning journey of preschool children, and the need for financial support in reducing socioeconomic barriers. We have seen the importance of addressing these issues before they reach school-going age, in order to avoid exclusion and marginalization. We have been made aware of the gap between relevant policies and strategies regarding inclusive education and the need to bring change now. In closing, I would like to address us as academics. What roles do we play in bringing change where change is needed? How can we help to bridge gaps between information, policies, and practices to ensure quality for all in the area of education? I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I've enjoyed doing it. Have a good day.